Welcome to African Christian Perspective. People, now we're looking at the last section in the introduction of the link between Genesis and African Christianity. The last session is the relevance of Genesis in Africa. Africans have many creation stories, and a good number of them have common elements with those of Genesis, particularly with regards to creation of human beings, their separation from God, and the origin of suffering and death. Other stories have the purpose of explaining the origin of certain natural phenomena or certain traditions and customs. There are similar stories in Genesis which serve the same purpose. In Africa, there are also some ethnic groups that have stories and legends about individual heroes who are believed to have founded their tribes, just as the Israelites have theirs about Abraham and the patriarchs, considered the founders of their 12 tribes. Scholars often refer to the mythology of the ancient Near East as a help for understanding the background and meaning of many passages in Genesis, especially in the first 11 chapters. Similar stories from Africa can, in the same way, help Africans, perhaps non Africans as well, to understand much in Genesis, not only the primeval history of the first 11 chapters, but also the history of the ancestors in the rest of the book. For both Christians and Jews, Genesis has always been a major source for theological reflection on the meaning of the universe and human existence. Every age has read it in view of finding answers to its own questions and concerns. The end of the 20th century too is facing its own problems, and theologicals are once again looking for Genesis of the Bible for enlightenment. They are looking at the old familiar text and trying to see a new meaning that might shed light on the contemporary problems and contribute towards their solution. Among present day concerns, there is a problem of ecology. The garden that God planted and entrusted human beings to cultivate and look after has suffered destruction and exploitation. The sea too is being populated to the extent that soon it may not be able to support life anymore. Faced with these global issues, nations are beginning to realize that the problems of the environment cannot be solved by individual countries. This is where the unity of humanity, as seen in Genesis, is beginning to make sense. The problems that affect the whole planet can only be solved by international collaboration. Another contemporary issue, particularly in Africa, is the inequality of the sexes. In many societies, women are still treated as inferior to men, and this treatment sometimes is claimed to be based on certain texts of Genesis. Theologians today, particularly feminists, are taking a second look at the creation stories of Genesis and discovering that the subordinary of women to men does not find any justification in the Bible. They are correctly reinterpreting the text in a way that clearly brings out the equality of sexes as intended by God. Genesis, therefore, is still as relevant to the concerns of the people of today as it has always been to those of the past. Christians, Jews, and all people of goodwill continue to find in it much inspiration for understanding new situations and facing new challenges in their conviction that God's dealings with Israel in the story of Genesis are a pattern of his providential care for the rest of the humankind. This was the last section that we look at in the introduction, or we look at the introduction and the link between Genesis, the book of Genesis, and African Christianity. We're going to be continuing further into looking deeply at each chapter of Genesis and its link to African Christianity as a whole, and how Christianity affected the African continent and how the African continent is influenced by the Christian religion. Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. And may God bless you and the heavens be with you.